20 years ago, Japan was the undisputed king of the global automotive industry. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, names that stood for efficiency, quality, and the future of mobility. Today, they are losing ground in the world's largest car market. Not to America. Not to Europe. But to China. Inside China itself, Japanese cars are being pushed aside by a surge of local electric vehicles, cheaper, smarter, and produced on a scale the world has never seen before. In Southeast Asia, a region once almost entirely dominated by Japan, Chinese brands are now taking over the streets. And this isn't just about cars. This is a shift in global industrial power. Because if Japan, the nation that built modern manufacturing, can be cornered like this, what does that mean for Europe and America? Today, we break down how China quietly took control of the global auto industry, why Japan's giants are starting to fall, and why the impact will soon be felt across the Western economy. Two decades ago, Japan accounted for more than 20% of global car production. Today, that figure has fallen to around 11%. And China? China now produces nearly 40% of the world's passenger vehicles, making it the largest automotive manufacturing hub on the planet. And this isn't just about the number of cars. China controls the core technologies that define modern vehicles. The entire lithium battery supply chain, from raw materials to finished products. The world's cheapest and largest battery cell production. Vehicle software, digital cockpit systems, and AI-driven technology. Manufacturing scale that neither the US nor Europe can match. The result? Chinese electric vehicles aren't cheap simply because of government subsidies. They're cheap because China controls the entire ecosystem behind them. Battery costs in China can be tens of % lower than those of Western manufacturers. Shorter supply chains. Massive production volumes. Technology developed domestically, not imported. That's why BYD, Geely, SAIC, and dozens of other brands can flood global markets with prices that seem almost impossible to Western automakers. But there's one crucial detail often overlooked by Western media. Right now, China is facing massive industrial overcapacity in its auto sector. Factories were built too fast. Production far exceeds domestic demand. Prices at home are being crushed by brutal discount wars. The solution? Exports. On a massive scale. To Southeast Asia. To the Middle East. To Africa. And slowly, to Europe. This is why the European Union and the United States are rushing to impose high tariffs on Chinese EVs. Not because of fair competition, but because they understand what's really happening. This isn't just about exporting cars. It's about exporting industrial power. And when China controls batteries, software, and global production volume, they're not just selling vehicles. They're controlling the future of transportation itself. For decades, Asia was Japan's kingdom. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Mitsubishi. In countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, nearly every road was filled with Japanese cars. In China, Japanese brands were once seen as symbols of quality and reliability. But all of that has changed incredibly fast. In China, the world's largest auto market, every major Japanese automaker is losing market share. Sales data from 2019 to 2024 tells the story clearly. Japanese brands in China have lost roughly 12 percentage points of market share. Chinese brands have gained around 23 percentage points in the same period. BYD alone has surged to become one of the largest automakers in the country. Even Toyota, the world's #1 car manufacturer, is now seeing stagnant sales in China. Honda and Nissan have fallen even harder. And it's not just China. In Southeast Asia, Japan's last stronghold, the pattern is starting to repeat. In Singapore, Japanese market share has dropped from over 50% to around 35%. In Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, Chinese brands are steadily eating away at Japan's long-standing dominance. In Indonesia, BYD broke straight into the top 10 best-selling brands just months after officially entering the market. The message is clear. Decades of brand loyalty are beginning to collapse. So the big question is, how did Japan lose so quickly? The answer lies in one major strategic mistake. Japan bet too long on hybrids. In the US and Europe, that strategy once looked brilliant. As EV adoption slowed, hybrids made a strong comeback. But in China, it became a disaster. China skipped straight to full electric vehicles. By 2023, more than 50% of new cars sold in China were NEVs, pure electric and plug-in hybrids. Local manufacturers had already taken the lead in battery technology, charging infrastructure, and vehicle software. Meanwhile, Japan? Still focused on perfecting gasoline engines paired with electric motors. By the time Toyota and Honda seriously moved into EVs, Chinese brands were already 5 to 10 years ahead in building their ecosystems. It was like a race where Japan was just putting on its running shoes, while China was already crossing the finish line. And this is exactly why this topic matters for audiences in the US and Europe. If a country with the world's strongest reputation for efficiency, the most disciplined manufacturing culture, brands trusted for generations, can be pushed aside this quickly, then Western automakers are not immune. What is happening to Japan today could very well be the blueprint for the downfall of the Western auto industry tomorrow. On the surface, Chinese electric vehicles may look like nothing more than cheap products that happen to sell well. But behind that image, the biggest price war in modern automotive history is unfolding. And the victims aren't just Japanese automakers. The next targets are Europe and eventually America. Let's look at the facts. Chinese manufacturers, especially BYD, are aggressively slashing prices at home and in export markets. This isn't temporary discounting. It's a structural strategy built on massive production scale and total control of the supply chain. Because China dominates battery raw materials, the world's largest battery cell factories, vehicle assembly at enormous volumes. They can sell EVs at price points and margins that Western automakers simply cannot match. In many segments, Chinese EVs are tens of % cheaper than European or Japanese models with comparable specifications and often with more advanced technology. Meanwhile, traditional automakers are facing a brutal reality. High battery costs, long, fragmented supply chains, relatively small EV production volumes. This is why so many Western manufacturers are slowing down their EV expansion, cutting investments, and shutting down production lines. In Europe, the biggest fear isn't just losing market competition. It's the potential collapse of the entire national automotive industrial base. The auto industry supports millions of jobs, vast supplier networks in steel, chemicals, and electronics, exports worth hundreds of billions of dollars. If cheap Chinese EVs flood the market without barriers, many local manufacturers could collapse before they even have time to adapt. And Western governments know it. That's why the European Union has begun imposing high tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. The United States is aggressively raising import duties. The official justification is unfair competition and state subsidies. But the real strategic reason runs much deeper. This is about protecting core national industries. Because if the auto sector falls, it won't just be companies that collapse. It will be the backbone of entire economies. But there's a major problem. Tariffs can slow China down. They cannot erase China's structural advantages. As long as China controls batteries, production volume, and core technology, this price war will continue to pressure anyone who enters the global EV arena. And the question is no longer, can the West compete? The real question is, how long can they survive? For decades, innovation in the automotive world moved in one direction. Technology was developed in Japan, Germany, and the United States and then adopted by the rest of the world. Today, that flow has reversed. And the shift is happening faster than anyone expected. The clearest proof comes from Japan itself. Toyota, long seen as a symbol of conservative, self-reliant engineering, is now directly integrating China's technology ecosystem into its vehicles for the Chinese market. Electric models like the Toyota BZ7 are being built in partnership with GAC and powered by Huawei's digital systems. Harmony OS-based digital cockpits. Fully integrated vehicle software. Smart sensors and next-generation driver assistance systems. This isn't just about components. The digital brain of the car is coming from China. Nissan has gone even further. Its latest gasoline-powered sedan in China now uses a Harmony OS cockpit, the first non-electric vehicle in the world to do so. The message is unmistakable. The standard for modern vehicle user experience is now being set by Chinese technology. And this is far from an isolated case. Across the entire industry, the most advanced batteries come from Chinese companies. Energy management systems are developed in China. Vehicle software increasingly depends on Chinese platforms. Even many Western automakers are now buying Chinese battery cells, AI driving modules from China, infotainment systems made in China, simply because they are more advanced and far cheaper. Globally, China has become the world's largest auto producer, responsible for nearly 40% of global output. The undisputed leader of the EV battery supply chain. The biggest laboratory for electric and smart vehicle innovation. Meanwhile, Japan, which once produced more than 20% of the world's cars, now accounts for only about 11%. This change is not just economic. It is a fundamental shift in technological power. The country that once learned manufacturing from the West has now become the source of innovation that the global industry follows. The roles of teacher and student have been completely reversed. And when giants like Toyota and Nissan start adopting Chinese systems just to survive, it signals one undeniable reality. China is no longer a low-cost competitor. China has become the new center of global automotive technology. For decades, the world believed the center of the global auto industry was in Japan, Germany, and the United States. Now the reality has changed, not gradually, but brutally fast. China is no longer just catching up. It already controls production, technology, pricing, and the future direction of the automotive industry. Japan is losing its dominance in Asia. The West is raising tariffs just to hold the line. Even the world's biggest automakers are now learning from Chinese technology simply to avoid being left behind. This is not a normal business cycle. This is a shift in global industrial power. And the world is still not ready to accept one uncomfortable truth. The future of the automobile is no longer defined in the West, it is being coded in China. Which leaves one big question. If the auto industry can be taken over this quickly, what sector will be next?